What is up, everybody? My name is Logan Stroh, and welcome to CTF Stroh Talks Football. Today, I'm going to be giving you guys my Week 14 NFL reactions. We're in Week 14 already. Holy crap. So, yeah, I have a lot of football to talk about, so let's get started. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, turn on notification bells so you don't miss any of my videos whenever I post. With all the way, let's get started. So, the first game we had on Thursday Night Football, we had the Green Bay Packers at the Detroit Lions, and man, this was a shootout. Both of these teams looked great, but the Lions came up as the better team at the end, and it shows. Let's just look at the Packers here. Jordan Love had a pretty decent game, 12 for 20, 206 passing yards, 1 touchdown, no turnovers. Rushing was led by Josh Jacobs, who had a great game, 18 carries for 66 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then receiving was led by Christian Watson with 4 receptions, 114 yards, no score, but Tucker Kraft did have a receiving touchdown. Also notice that Jayden Reed did not have a single reception or any yards or any touchdowns. I had that MFer in fantasy, man. Like, I'm furious. You're not going to see a lot of defensive production out of this game just because of how much of a shootout it was, but the Packers defense had a sack and a pick on the day. Now, looking at the Lions here, Jared Goff had a pretty decent game, 32 for 41, 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Rushing was surprisingly slow in this game, but it was led by David Montgomery with 14 carries, 51 yards, and a touchdown. And then receiving was led by Jameson Williams with 5 receptions, 80 yards, no score. But Tim Patrick had two receiving touchdowns, and then Jahmyr Gibbs had a receiving touchdown. And just like I said about defenses where you're not going to see a lot of production out of this game just because it was a shootout. Like the Lions defense only had a sack, but that's not really a bad thing just because both teams were scoring left and right. So yeah, good win by Detroit, and they have now clinched a playoff spot, and they have had the best season ever so far with a 12-1 record. Very impressive. So the next game we had was the Browns at the Steelers, and yeah, the Steelers won like I thought they would. The Browns were putting up a couple highlights in this game, just not enough to beat the Steelers in this one. Looking at the Browns here, Jameis Winston had another Jameis-like game, 24 for 41, 212 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Rushing was pretty lousy, and man, I gotta say, I hope this is a one-year thing with Nick Chubb because he has looked really slow this year. Like, he's looked way worse than he usually is. I know that injury is tough, but still, man, like, it's sad to see how poorly Nick Chubb has been playing this season. And then receiving was led by Jerry Jeudy with 5 receptions, 64 yards, and a touchdown. And then David Njoku had a receiving touchdown. And then the Browns had a total of 1 sack on the day. Now, looking at the Steelers here, Russell Wilson did not really throw for a lot, but he was pretty clean. 15 for 26, 158 yards, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. Rushing was led by Najee Harris with 16 carries, 53 yards, and a touchdown. Not really that good production-wise, but he got a touchdown, so I guess that's cool. And then receiving was very lousy, shockingly, and it was led by Pat Freiermuth with 3 receptions, 48 yards, and a touchdown. And then also Van Jefferson having a receiving touchdown. And then looking at the Steelers defense, they had a total of 3 sacks and 2 interceptions on the day. So great win by the Steelers, and they are sitting comfortably on the top of their division at 10-3. Next game we got was the Saints at the Giants, and this was a nothing game, but the Saints got the dub as I thought. Looking at the Giants here, Drew Lock looked terrible. 21 for 49, 227 yards, no touchdowns, 1 pick. Rushing was led by Drew Lock with 5 carries, 59 yards, no score. But Tyrone Tracy did have a rushing touchdown, but other than that, production for him was horrible. And then leading receiving was Malik Neighbors, who was trying all he can to make something out of nothing. 5 receptions, 79 yards, no score. And then the Giants had a total of 2 sacks on the day and also a pick. And then looking at the Saints here, even though it shows differently on stats, Derek Carr was terrible. 20 for 31, 219 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Ended up getting hurt at the end of the game too, go figure. Rushing was extremely lousy for Kamara, but Kendre Miller did have a rushing touchdown. And then receiving was led by MVS with 4 receptions, 51 yards, no score, but Juwan Johnson did have a receiving touchdown. And then the Saints had a total of 2 sacks and a pick on the day. So yeah, both teams looked horrible in this game, but the Saints ended up winning this one. This was a nothing game, and that's that. Next game was the Jets at the Dolphins, and this was surprisingly a very entertaining game. I didn't think these two teams were going to score this much. Like, this was back and forth, man, and this went to overtime. Like, how crazy is that? Like, I never thought this game would be as good as this. So looking at the Jets here, Aaron Rodgers actually had a good game in 2024. What? He was 27th for 39, 39 passing yards, 1 touchdown, no turnovers. Rushing was pretty lousy, but Isaiah Davis did have a rushing touchdown, but rushing wasn't really their strong suit in this game. And then receiving was led by Garrett Wilson with 7 receptions, 114 yards, no score, but Devontae Adams did have 9 receptions, 109 yards, and a touchdown. And then looking at the Jets defense, they did absolutely nothing. Now looking at the Dolphins here, Tua also had a pretty good game, 33 for 47, 331 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. Rushing was horrible for Devon Achane, but he did have a rushing touchdown. Both rushing teams were rushing was bad for both teams in this game. It was mostly passing. And then receiving was led by Tyreek Hill with 10 receptions, 115 yards, and a touchdown. Good to see him play well again. And then Jalen Waddle had 9 receptions, 99 yards, and no score. And then Jonnu Smith did also have a receiving touchdown. And then looking at the Dolphins defense, they had a total of 3 sacks on the day. So yeah, good game by both teams. You could tell the Jets were fighting for their lives because, as you can tell, after this Jets loss, they were now eliminated from the playoffs. How crazy is this, man? Like, they were seen as a Super Bowl contender at the start of the season, like during preseason. That's hysterical. Next game we got was the Jaguars at the Titans, and I'm going to go pretty fast with this one just because I don't want you to turn off the video off of boredom. So yeah, Will Levis was absolutely lousy. He did not do anything. Tony Pollard should get recognition, though. 21 carries, 102 yards, but no score. And then Calvin Ridley was the only good receiver doing anything. Other than that, nobody could do anything. And then the Titans defense did absolutely nothing other than having 2 interceptions. And then looking at the Jaguars, Mac Jones was terrible, throwing 2 picks. Tank Bigsby had a pretty good game. Like, he had a touchdown and 18 carries for 55 yards. Also to note, Travis Etienne has been terrible this season. I just wanted to say that. And then receiving was led by Brian Thomas with 8 receptions, 86 yards. And then the Jaguars defense had a total of 2 sacks on the day. Other than that, not much. So yeah, this was a nothing game for 2 nothing teams, and the Titans got eliminated from the playoffs after this. Well, good thing, because both of these teams don't deserve to go anywhere. Next game we got was the Falcons at the Vikings, and what did I tell you, Atlanta? I mean, this game was pretty close for, like, halftime at least, and then the second half comes around, and the Vikings absolutely exploded, man. Like, they just went off the walls, and they just played, they played really well. Looking at the Falcons here, Kirk Cousins continues to play terrible, even though he did have 344 passing yards. He did not throw a single touchdown. He threw 2 picks, man. It's really sad to see because I love Kirk Cousins, but you have to be honest sometimes, and he's playing like shit. Rushing was led by Bijan with 22 carries, 92 yards, and a touchdown. Tyler Algier also had a rushing touchdown. And then receiving was led by Darnell Mooney with 6 receptions, 142 yards, and no score. Ray McLeod also had 8 receptions for 98 yards, and then Drake London had 5 receptions for 70 yards. And then the Falcons defense was able to get to Sam Darnold 4 times in total. Now looking at the Vikings here, Sam Darnold played excellent, 22 for 28, 347 yards, 5 touchdowns, no turnovers. He's having an incredible season. Rushing was led by Aaron Jones for 13 carries, 73 yards, and a touchdown. And then both top 2 receivers went absolutely off. Jordan Addison being the leader with 8 receptions, 133 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was great in fantasy, as well as Justin Jefferson being great. 7 receptions, 132 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then looking at the Vikings defense, they surprisingly were able to get to Kirk Cousins only once, but they did pick him off twice. So yeah, the Vikings at the end proved why they are a great team, and the Falcons just keep proving why they're such a huge fraud, man. You can't count on this team, no matter how much talent they get. And I'm starting to think this is a coaching issue, too. Like, I'm starting to think Raheem Morris is a bad coach, man. Like, it is not going well over there. This team should be, like, the top of the division. This team should be at least, 9-3, man. Like, this is ridiculous. Next game we got was the Panthers at the Eagles, and I told you this game was going to be stupidly close. I knew the Panthers were going to compete in this one. Looking at the Panthers, Bryce Young might have not had his best game, but he did throw 191 passing yards, 1 touchdown, but did have 1 pick. Rushing was led by Chuba Hubbard with 26 carries, 92 yards, and a touchdown. And then receiving was led by Adam Thielen with 9 receptions, 102 yards, and no touchdown, but Tommy Tremble did have a receiving touchdown. And then looking at the Panthers defense, they were able to get to Jalen Hurts a total of 4 times on the day. And then looking at the Eagles here, Jalen Hurts had a pretty solid game, 14 for 21, 108 yards, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. Rushing was led by Saquon Barkley with 20 carries, 124 yards, no touchdowns. Jalen Hurts did have a rushing touchdown, though. And then receiving was surprisingly terrible, with 4 receptions, 43 yards, and no touchdowns for A.J. Brown being the leader. There's something going on with the chemistry of Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, man. Like, I'm starting to see it. Like, I have A.J. Brown in fantasy, so I'm able to, like, pay attention more, but there's something going on, man. But also to note, Devontae Smith did have a receiving touchdown, as well as Grant Calcaterra. I think I did well right there. And then looking at the Eagles' defense, they were only able to sack Bryce Young once, but they did pick him off once as well. So yeah, great win by the Eagles, and I believe they did also clinch a playoff spot with this win. So yeah, the Eagles have been playing miles better than they did last season. Like, they're proving a lot of people wrong. Next game we got was the Raiders at the Bucks, and this is an example of a game where the score says it's closer than it really was. If you watch this game, you would know that this game was an ass beating. Looking at the Raiders here, Aiden O'Connell did get the start, but he also got hurt, so Desmond Ridder had to make the start. And either way, both quarterbacks were terrible. Really nothing to talk about. Rushing was led by Sincere McCormick with 15 carries, 78 yards, no score. But Aiden O'Connell did have a rushing touchdown before he got hurt. And then receiving was led by Michael Mayer with 7 receptions, 68 yards, no score. And then looking at the Raiders defense, they were able to get to Baker Mayfield 4 times a total. Now looking at the Bucks, Baker Mayfield looked a little off, but he did play pretty solid. 18 for 29, 295 yards, 3 touchdowns, but 2 picks. Rushing was led by Rachaad White with 17 carries, 90 yards, a touchdown. And then receiving was led by Cade Otton with 3 receptions, 70 yards, and no touchdown. Jalen McMillan did have 2 receiving touchdowns, and then Rachaad White also had a receiving touchdown. And then looking at the Bucks defense, they had a total of 2 sacks and a pick on the day. So yeah, even though this was really a nothing game, at the same time it kind of was like something, just because this was a much needed win for the Bucks to solidify themselves as a playoff contender. And with how the Falcons have been playing lately, I do believe the Bucks will actually win this division and make the playoffs. Like, they're good enough for it. Next game we got was the Seahawks at the Cardinals, and yeah, I'm done, Arizona. Like, look at the score, man. 30-18. Like, are you serious? At your home stadium? Like, come on, dude. Like, Kyler Murray was okay. 25 for 38, 259 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 2 picks. Rushing was led by James Conner with 18 carries, 90 yards, no score. And then receiving was led by Trey McBride with 7 receptions, 70 yards, no touchdowns. And then Michael Wilson had a receiving touchdown, as well as James Conner. And then looking at the Cardinals' defense, they could do absolutely nothing. And then looking at the Seahawks, like, Geno Smith hardly had to do anything. Like, he rarely had to lift a finger, but he still got the win. 24 for 30, 233 yards, 1 touchdown. Like, he literally hardly had to do anything. Kenneth Walker got hurt for the millionth time, so making the start was Zach Charbonnet, and he had a great game. 22 carries, 134 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then receiving was led by Jackson Smith and Jigba with 5 receptions, 82 yards, and a touchdown. Man, DK Metcalf is not having that good of a year, man. Like, he's slowing down immensely. And then looking at the Seahawks defense, they had a total of 2 sacks and 2 picks on the day. So yeah, good win by the Seahawks, and they are now 8-5. Like, Cardinals, do you know what this game reminded me of? Like, you guys look like the Eagles from last season, man. Like, not as good, but still, like, you guys looked really good at the start of the year. Like, you guys looked promising. And then you guys just have lost after loss after loss. Like, you guys have looked embarrassing. Like, even when you guys have been able to win, like, you guys still look embarrassing. So, yeah, I'm done giving you guys credit. You guys suck. All right, next game we got was the Bears at the Niners. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but are the Niners actually playing like the Niners again? Like, I was saying this the whole time I was watching this. Like, I can't tell if the Niners legit played a great game or if the Bears just suck this much. Like, I can't tell. But either way you look at this game, like, the Bears were horrible. Caleb Williams did not play that great. 17 for 23, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns. No turnovers, but most of the time he wasn't able to get the ball to anybody. Rushing was atrocious, and then leading receiving was DJ Moore with 6 receptions, 49 yards, no touchdowns. But Rome Odunze did have 2 receiving touchdowns. And then looking at the Bears defense, they had a total of 1 sack and 1 pick on the day. Now looking at the Niners, Brock Purdy played really great. 20 for 25, 325 yards, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. They played so great that they put in Brandon Allen towards the end of the game, and he threw a pick because he's terrible. Niners have nobody at running, as a runner anymore. Both of their running backs are hurt, so making the start was Isaac Guerendo. He had a pretty solid game. 15 carries for 78 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then Patrick Taylor also had a rushing touchdown. And then receiving was led by George Kittle, who was electric with 6 receptions, 151 yards, no touchdowns. But Juwan Jennings did have 7 receptions, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns. They played great ball. And then looking at the Niners defense, they had a total of 6 sacks on the day. That just shows how good the Niners defense actually played for once, and also how horrible the Bears offensive line is. So yeah, great win by the Niners. Much needed win by the Niners. And yeah, like I said earlier, I can't tell if the Niners actually played a great game or if the Bears just look this bad of a team. I really can't tell. Niners fans, you have to let me know in the comments what you think. So yeah, their next game against the Rams is going to be an interesting one on Thursday night. I really want to see how this one's going to play out. Speaking of the Rams, this is the next game. The Rams beat the Bills. This was an electric game, man. Both teams looked incredible. The Rams looked like a legit team, man. This was crazy. Even though the Bills lost, Josh Allen was phenomenal. 22 for 37, 342 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. And then you go to rushing. He led rushing with 10 carries, 82 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He had 6 touchdowns in total in that game. He carried the Bills in this game. And then receiving was led by Khalil Shakir with 5 receptions, 106 yards, and a touchdown. Also note, Amari Cooper also had 6 receptions, 95 yards, no touchdown. Matt Collins had a receiving touchdown. And then Ty Johnson had a receiving touchdown. And then also, this is another game you're going to see no defensive production just because this game was so back and forth, all game long. Both teams' offenses played out of their minds. Now, looking at the Rams, Matthew Stafford had a great game, 23 for 30, 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Rushing was led by Kyren Williams with 29 carries, 87 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Puka Nacua also having a rushing touchdown. And then receiving was led by Puka Nacua with 12 receptions, 162 yards, and a touchdown. He was electric. As well as Cooper Kupp having 5 receptions, 92 yards, and a touchdown as well. And again, the Rams defense didn't do much either just because this game was so back and forth. So yeah, this was arguably the game of the year so far, and the Rams actually looked like a contender. If they play like this and they make it to the playoffs, I could see them possibly winning a playoff game, man. They looked great. Next game we got was Sunday Night Football. The Chargers at the Chiefs, and the Chiefs' devil magic strikes again. Looking at the Chargers here, Justin Herbert was okay. 21 for 30, 213 yards, 1 touchdown, no turnovers. Rushing was pretty bad. It was led by Gus Edwards, 10 carries, 36 yards, and a touchdown. And then receiving was led by Joshua Palmer with 6 receptions, 78 yards, no score. But Quentin Johnson did have a receiving touchdown. And then looking at the Chargers defense, they were able to get to Mahomes 3 times in total. Now looking at the Chiefs, it's so funny how Mahomes barely has to lift a finger and sometimes doesn't even play a good game, but he still wins. 24 for 37, 210 yards, 1 touchdown, no turnovers. Rushing was led by Isaiah Pacheco with 14 carries, 55 yards, no score. Other than that, rushing was pretty lousy. And then looking at receiving for the Chiefs, it was also extremely lousy, but it was led by Travis Kelce with 5 receptions, 45 yards, and no score. DeAndre Hopkins did have a receiving touchdown, though. And then looking at the Chiefs' defense, they had a total of 3 sacks on the day. So yeah, this was a pretty boring game, but the Chiefs ended up winning with a doink field goal. That's why I was saying the devil magic strikes again, man. They win in the most ridiculous ways. So yeah, the Chiefs actually ended up winning the division with this game for the 9th straight time. Yippee. And then the last game we had was Monday Night Football. We had the Bengals at the Cowboys, and I told you, Dallas, I told you guys were going to lose this game. Looking at the Cowboys, Cooper Rush really was not that great. 16 for 31, 183 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Rushing was led by Rico Dowdle, who's really, honestly, has started turning things around. 18 carries, 131 yards, and no touchdowns. I mean, even though the Bengals defense is terrible, he actually has been playing good ball lately. And then receiving was led by CeeDee Lamb with 6 receptions, 93 yards, and a touchdown. Also, Brandon Cooks having a receiving touchdown as well. And then looking at the defense, they had a total of 2 sacks and 1 pick on the day. Now looking at the Bengals, another great game by Joe Burrow, 33 for 44, 369 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Rushing was led by Chase Brown with 14 carries at 58 yards, no score. And then receiving was led by Jamar Chase, who had a fantastic game, 14 receptions, 177 yards, 2 touchdowns. As well as Chase Brown having 6 receptions, 65 yards, and a touchdown. And then looking at the Bengals defense, they had a total of 3 sacks and a pick on the day. So yeah, pretty solid game, and the Cowboys lost in the most Dallas Cowboys way. They lost off a block punt they had, but they muffed the ball to where the Bengals got the ball back and they scored. Also, one thing to note, this was also broadcasted on like Disney Plus and ESPN Plus for like some special Simpsons broadcasts. I watched a little bit of it, and it was actually pretty entertaining, man. Just seeing watching Homer Simpson throw the ball to the clown. Like, it was so funny, man. It was actually really fun to watch. And there you guys have it. Those were my Week 14 NFL reactions. We are getting into a very interesting part of the NFL season because fantasy playoffs are now among us. So stay safe out there and start setting your fantasy football lineups to start in playoff battle for fantasy. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, turn on notification bells so you don't miss any of my videos whenever I post. With all that said, I'm Logan Sharon. I'll see you next time.